Well, welcome everybody to Marketing Management and Money, here with Ryan Murray.
Ethan Migliori.
So, I have a live training coming up, and they asked me, it's going to be primarily customer service. I actually end up doing a lot of customer service trainings. A lot of customers. Apparently, people are just jerks to people because everyone's like, please teach us how to be. I'm like, I don't know that I should be telling you how to be nice.
Well, you know what's crazy about it is you would think at some level customer service would just be inherent as humans, but it's not.
So that's okay. Let me share what we're going to talk about today, and then I'm gonna comment on that. So I decided that I wanted to touch on a couple things that I'm going to do in the training. And one of the big things that I'm going to talk about is why is it that we all know how we want to be treated, but yet we all can say that we've had bad customer experiences, multiple bad customer experiences. And so what's the disconnect between how we want to be treated and how we treat others? And I'm like, well, it kind of boils down to a little bit of a selfish nature. As a human being, I know what I want, and I want you to give me everything that I want. But then if I have to turn around and reciprocate, I want to reciprocate at the minimum level, because...
and that's exactly the point. That you need to understand that in customer service.
Yeah. And so I'm going to do this game in the class. So I'm going to bring someone up and just say, hey, I need a volunteer, right? And I'm going to have them come up, and I'm going to pull out a $20 bill. And I'm going to give them that $20 bill. And then I'm going to be like, thank you. And then just have them go sit down. And I will tell them, I'll be like, there's more to that, but there you go, there's $20. And they'll kind of sit there. And I'm going to let kind of the psychology mess with them for a second. Because, what's he expecting? What do I have to do with this? Is it really mine? Because, if someone in front of an audience gives you $20... Are
you going to really take it back? Just use me as an example.
Yeah. So then what I'm going to do is after a little while, I'm going to be like, hey, you got $20 from me, right? Yeah? I just gave it to you, right? Yeah. Do you want to give that to anyone else?
Oh. Ouch.
What do you think they're going to do?
No.
They're going to keep it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be like, okay, that's fine. And then I'll go through the presentation. I'll do a little bit more. And then I'll pause. And I'll be like, okay, I want to go back to this $20 bill example. I gave him $20. He's now up $20. And I asked him if he wanted to give it to anyone else. He said no. He wants to keep it for himself. Isn't that customer service? Isn't it that we all want to receive the $20, but when it's like, hey, you could make that person's day,
right?
So I'm gonna play with that and see if it works in the training.
I want to be a fly on the wall.
If they do give it to someone else, then I'll just
see how far
it goes, and then I'll just talk about customer service. I'm like, customer service is like giving this $20. When you give something to someone, and the funny thing is, so in prepping for this, it's weird because in my mind, I had this thought, I'm getting paid for this training, and I'm actually getting paid really well. When I do live trainings, I do my full fee, and I get paid really well. So $20 is not a big deal, right? And I had this thought. I'm like, should I add on $20 to my bill? And I wanted to just slap myself. Because I'm like, what am I doing? And it's human nature. Because it was like, well, that's my $20. It's this is their training. And I'm like, no. If I wanted to add on $20, I should have added it on when I first, bid out the training for them. But I'm making enough that it more than covers $20. It's not even factored in. Yeah. But yet for some reason in my mind I'm like, oh, I have to give away $20. And so funny, the stupid psychology.
Well, and that's what I loved when you brought up this topic. Is the psychology of it is just fascinating. Because you don't, until you actually have this conversation or you do a training like this where you have this conversation, you don't understand that customer service has so much psychology tied to it and emotions tied to it that's where we get ourselves in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's going to be the play that I'm going to do on this training. But I want to pull something else in. So I get this a lot when people ask for trainings. They like to bundle them. And personally, I disagree with bundling it. I get in their mind, they're like, well, I've got everyone together and, we're already doing a training. So they want to put in a bunch of etiquette, dress etiquette, phone etiquette,
Makes sense with customer service, though.
To me, it doesn't. Okay, I want to hear your side. Why are you saying that makes sense?
No, you tell me why it doesn't make sense. Because I'll tell you why I think it makes sense. Because customer service is like marketing. It's everything that you do.
Okay.
Right? So if customer service, everything that I do is tied to customer service, then that means that the way I dress, how I answer a phone, how I have conversations, how I greet somebody is all tied into that customer service.
Okay. So here's where I'm disagreeing with it. If you talk about dress, and this is how I'm going to put it in the training, right? I'm gonna say, what is the first consideration when you look at business dress? I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Okay, great.
What is the first consideration when you look at business dress? Whatever business that is, right? Don't just think of the business that you're in. This is I'm presenting to an audience. There will be about 150 people there, so it's going to be a broad audience. Okay.
So business dress is determined by the environment of the business.
Okay. So what should I factor in first? If I'm a manager and I'm going to put together some sort of, doesn't every company have a uniform? Even if their uniform is like, we're chill here, wear whatever you want. That's still a uniform.
That's right.
Because the second you say wear whatever you want, no one's showing up in a 3-piece suit. Right?
That's right.
They're now in shorts and Hawaiian shirts.
Right.
And everyone is kind of dressed. There's a range of what's acceptable. If you're going to have required polos with the brand right here,
right.
That becomes the uniform. If you're going to have, the scrubs is going to be your uniform. Like there's kind of a standard.
I agree with that.
And so what do you in your mind, what would be the first consideration of how to set up that standard?
Oh my.
I'm the manager, whether I put it in employee handbook or whether I just, make it part of the culture or whether I let the subculture dictate it.
That's an interesting question.
I've had more time to think about it than you because I have been prepping on this.
I like the culture, but it only takes one person in a management position to destroy that culture.
True.
And at the same time, though, if you put it in a handbook, are you going to enforce it? Because if you're not going to enforce it, it doesn't do any good to have it in a handbook. And if you do put in a written dress code, because I think there's cases for when there should or shouldn't be a dress code. Because certain environments, meaning if I'm on a manufacturing line, steel-toed boots might be part of that dress code. I can't have you in flip-flops there, right? So I think there are some standards, but it doesn't also necessarily mean that because I'm in a management position, I should have a suit and a tie on every day.
It very much depends.
Yeah.
A lot of people, if they sell a certain product, they're going to look the part.
Right.
If I sell outdoor gear, I shouldn't show up in a suit and tie. I should show up in, like hiking shorts and, and like a jacket.
Well, see, that's interesting because I just watched, unbeknownst to this conversation, a documentary, and there was an attorney that was helping some. They were a minority status, but I don't remember the exact reason why. Because I just remember him in a comment that he made. That's what stuck out about it. Because he was dressed really, really casual.
Yeah.
Okay. And
the attorney was?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Like t-shirt.
Yeah.
Casual, right? Not even polo or a button-up shirt that's not tucked in casual. Okay. He was in a t-shirt. And they said, but don't you think people aren't going to take you serious? And, the way you're dressed? He says, you don't understand. The clientele that I work with, if I can't be at their level and relate to them, I can't get to the root of the problem to help them fix it.
So I had a flashback. I don't know if you're going to remember this. We had just met. Well, okay. I take that back. We actually had met a couple times previously, but we were working together, just met. So we were actually, you were introducing me to some businesses for some business consulting. And I showed up in a suit and tie. I don't know if you remember this. Mm-hmm. So I show up in a suit and tie, and we're driving down. And you look at me and you're like, all right, take the jacket off right now. And honestly, at least undo the tie, but probably take that off too.
I can believe it.
And you were adamant, and I said, I'm like, well, I want to make a good impression. And you're like, you're making the wrong impression. You're going to come in so stiff. No one's going to listen to you at this company. Yeah. And you had me go casual right then and there. Before we ever went in, so kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah. I'm not surprised because because different clientele that I work with. Meaning, if I'm going to go to a construction site, I'm not wearing a suit.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to wear something a little bit more casual, but to kind of still say, look, I'm here for other reasons. I'm not a construction worker, but I'm going to dress a lot more casual. But if I'm going into a formal meeting, I may be in a suit and tie.
Yeah. Well, so
but most people don't have that filter, which is weird. Arguably, using your example, you didn't have that filter.
Well, I actually came from a different environment.
That's
because the business consulting that I had been doing previous to working with you, suit and tie was kind of expected. And, the type of clients, it was more of an urban area, and the type of clients that I was working with, I spent all my time in office space. And so, I would go into these office meetings, and, that's where the majority, I don't know what percentage, but, I'm going to say 60 or 70% of my meetings were in office space. So I started working with you, and it was very much on-site type work. It was dealing with, construction, agriculture, machining, manufacturing, and it was a very different environment. The ironic thing is I actually, when I started working with the clients you were introducing me to, I met more millionaires in agriculture, machining, like guys just gruff, big old beards and a ball cap, and they're spitting their chew. And they were so much richer than the people that, we were up on the 20th floor of the high-rise, suit and tie, PowerPoint, it was very, very interesting. That opened my eyes.
But that brings up a good point about customer service, and that is, don't ever judge by the cover.
Yeah.
Right? Because we make that mistake all the time in customer service, right? The guy who comes in, especially if you're in retail or, like food industry, someone comes in with the suit and the tie. All right, is he going to be stuck up, or say, I'm going to treat him better because he'll tip me better?
Yeah.
Right? And yet he could have been the one who just happened to be coming from a funeral and was dressed up.
Yeah. Well, opening chapter, I'm pretty sure it's the first chapter of Millionaire Next Door, really does an excellent job because it's an actual thing that happened. It's a real case study of what happened. And it really does an excellent job of what you're talking about, spelling out that scenario where they were trying to interview millionaires. And they had this, vision in their mind of what a millionaire would do and want, and they were completely off base. And so that's good read. Okay, so I want to jump back because I did ask a question. I made you answer it. I never actually answered it, so I'm going to answer it now. In the presentation that I'm going to give, I'm going to tell them the first consideration is health and safety. So
Agree.
if you are looking at a uniform for your company, and here's the funny thing, there's a lot of industries that are required. You mentioned, the steel-toed boots, but there's a lot that aren't required that still have a level of health and safety.
Right.
And, as managers, you need to be aware of what some of those unintended consequences are. So, for example, my brother's a manager in a piano bar, and it's a very popular piano bar. And his number one safety concern is for the cocktail waitresses. And so as a manager, now, if you're talking about uniform, think about this. A cocktail waitress has a uniform, and you get a bunch of drunk guys. That's a health risk, a safety risk for those girls. And so their uniform needs to be, and I'll talk, point number 2 is on brand, right? So their uniform needs to be on brand, but it also needs to be something that they feel safe in. If ever these guys are coming, if they're in like some ridiculous heels that they can't walk in,
that's right.
You've got a safety issue right there. And so, we always think about the traditional safety glasses, steel-toed boots, things of that nature. But I'm like, okay, protection from the sun, noise protection, that people forget about this stuff. Ability, freedom of movement so that I can do my job.
That's what I would always say, practicality. Dress code has to have practicality.
Yeah, so...
Meaning, I have a guy I know that I sit on a board with, has some ties to the automobile industry, and every once in a while, because of that, he'll come in a white shirt, but he's been coming from that industry, and I always shake my head. I'm like, I get the idea that you want to show the white, the cleanliness, the professionalism between it. We're not gonna sit in your vehicle with dirty clothes on and things like that. But at the same time, I'm like, man, is that really practical?
Yeah. And
but that goes to your branding of the image that they're trying to share as well, right?
So that's my number 2 consideration. So the first consideration is health and safety. Make sure that your employees are taken care of, whether that's regulated or not regulated, and think through some potential issues, right? But then the number 2 consideration should always be brand image, and there's the obvious brand image where, and I don't know, I haven't been in a Target store for a long time. Are they still brown slacks and red polos?
I haven't been in one for a long time either.
Okay.
But most Target, Walmart.
Well, Target really had an iconic look. Walmart, not so much.
True.
Walmart would have a vest on.
Shields does.
Yeah, there's a lot of these places that have a very iconic look, and you see that in retail. Retail is very typical for an iconic look. But and I'm going to go back to this cocktail waitress. Like, people coming there expect to have a certain level of entertainment, and that, there's a costume now, and all of the waitresses have a look, all of the managers have a look, and you expect that. You expect, and
that's, sorry, as you say that, it's funny because I was standing in a retail store recently, and I was in more of my business dress, and I was standing there looking at all the products, deciding, okay, look, I'm not finding what I'm looking for, right? And I'm standing there, my hands are just kind of resting behind my back as I'm standing there staring at it, and someone walks up to me and says, oh, I can see you work here. Can you tell me where to find? Because that was the image.
You were the brand.
That's right. I portrayed an image that they would expect to see of someone who had worked there, right? And I just kind of smiled. And funny enough, I happen to know where it was. That's the funny part. Oh, yeah, it's over there. I don't remember the aisle, but if you go past this, you'll find it, right? Thank you. And off they went. And as they went, I did that. I just kind of chuckled to myself because that's interesting that if you dress a certain way or you create a brand, you go into some other places and you can be mistaken because that's what people think of when they go there.
So I just got back from the World of Concrete trade show.
Oh, yeah.
And there's such a look at trade shows, you know, like, and it's funny because with what I do, I oversee the sales and marketing for a company called Dustless Technologies, and this is a big show for them. And now we're going to gear up to do that same trade show in Paris coming up in April, right? And we had this brand look that we wanted for this trade show, but now we're deciding, we're like, do we want the same brand look because we're going to be in a different environment? And so when you're looking at brand, you want to say, okay, not only what does my brand look like, but what does my brand look like across different environments? You know, if you have different regional locations, and there's a brand look of, you know, positions, hierarchy in the company.
That's right.
Where you know, you kind of want to have that, and you should be intentional about it. Even if you're a casual culture and you're like, do whatever you want to do.
Right.
No, it's not whatever you want to do. It's like, hey, whatever you want to do, but you know, make sure that it's a nice pair of jeans, and you know, if you're gonna wear a T-shirt, I don't want any loud designs on it. Or like, still put some parameters, because you can protect your brand with your employees as much as you would with any packaging, with any online presence. Right. You know,
the marketing, it's everything you do,
yeah,
including what your employees do,
and so you know, take your product, have your employee hold your product, and if they're ever customer facing, look at that employee and say, okay, that's an extension of the package.
That's right.
Does it match the package? And if it doesn't, put something in place that does match the package. And, you know, and so even if they're not forward-facing, like, think about this. Do you provide tours of your facility? Do people come in and meet the team? You know, so I was working with a company that was doing a massive overhaul on their website. And prior to engaging, they actually wanted to tour the space of the software company that they were considering. And, you know, you would think, well, it's a bunch of cubicles. Why do you care to tour that space? Their rationale was, they said, I want to see how big the company really is, because so many software companies are just, you know, some guy out of college down in his basement. Yeah. And he's like, I want a company. I want a company that has employees. I want to see, you know, that they're legit, that the space is actually an office, a viable office space. And, you know, and so they did. They walked through, and all they saw was cubicles, but they're like, okay, I actually saw how many employees they have. I could gauge the size of the company. Yeah. So I knew that they weren't going to shut down, you know, because they didn't want to get in a situation where their website shuts down because this person now, oh, sorry, I'm engaged, so I'm shutting down my business. Yeah. And you chuckle, but it's true.
Right, that's why I laugh, because it's true. I've seen it happen.
Yeah. So think about that. Where are you going to have people coming in? And, you know, are there certain things? Are you going to allow them to put any poster they want on their cubicle? Yeah. You know, like, is that part of your brand?
Well, but that also goes back, you know, because you part of this, what you need to touch on, or you are touching on, is etiquette.
Yeah.
Right? And so when you get to those finer pieces, I think that gets not necessarily brand as much as it does the etiquette of customer service, and the etiquette of brand development, and the etiquette of what the image we want to portray.
Yeah. Well, so that kind of, I mean, maybe it leads into, maybe I'm pulling it into, but my third point would be the person. So, you know, your first consideration is health and safety. Second consideration is the uniform on brand. And then the third consideration is the individuality of the person, you know, allowing that person to be who they are. And I know you're talking about the etiquette, but again, if you're stifling people too much, then
they won't stay.
I've seen people quit jobs over dress code. Yeah. You know, and you got to decide, is that, and sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes you're like, no, this is an important standard for our company.
Well, and this is an interesting subject in and of itself, because I've seen kind of this weird shift on dress code to include body ink tattoos.
Yeah.
You know, that we don't
Whether
care if
it's
you
allowed
have
or
them.
not.
Yeah, but we don't want them to be seen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or we don't care if they're seen, and we appreciate you sharing it. But that's been an interesting one that's kind of been rippling through the business world right now is what level of body work are we going to tolerate, you know, that our employees have? Because that obviously is never going to go away because it's just a huge fad right now. And I don't see
I'm going to say deeper than fad,
yeah,
you know?
you're probably, it's well ingrained. And I should say, I don't see it going away. There's too many people that use it as a way to express themselves.
Right.
And that's, as long as that exists, then tattoos will exist because it's a way of connecting with a side of me that I may not know how.
Well, okay, so I'm going to take that tattoo and I'm going to go a little bit further and say that social media introduced a new element to this whole discussion that wasn't there pre-social media, and that is, so, you know, I want to get some cool tats, right? But a lot of people put tats on some pretty interesting body parts, and then they want to show it off on social media, and, you know, is that something that your company cares about or doesn't care about? Are you, you know, and you know, we're picking on tattoos right now, but you could go with anything. You could say, okay, what type of behavior is allowed on your social media? And there's some people that are like, it's personal, you do whatever you want. There are other businesses that say you're still an extension of the company. You know, I've seen this with LinkedIn a lot,
right,
where people want to have a professional LinkedIn and they say, okay, you know, your LinkedIn needs to stay professional. Other social media platforms, you're free to do what you want. I know people that have interviewed for jobs. The company has, you know, checked them out on social media, denied the job to the employee because of what they've seen on social media.
Yes.
Happens a lot, you know, and so yeah, when you're talking about dress code, and I love the fact that you brought up tattoos because we don't think of that as dress, you know. And you can do the same thing with piercings, hairstyles,
right.
You know.
Anything that, see, dress to me is everything that
Appearance.
affects the physical appearance.
Yeah, you know, and so, you know, as a company, you should probably establish what your, you know, individuality limitations or expectations are. If you don't care, you should be open that you don't care.
Right.
But if you do care, you know, and there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, tattoos need to be covered up, you know, excessive piercings need to be taken out while you're working. And then you get, I mean, this gets dicey.
But I also tell most people, look, don't die on that sword, because there's a lot of things that are just common enough nowadays. We don't think anything about it. You know, when I see a lip or a nose piercing, I don't hardly even think about it.
Right.
When I first saw it 10, 15 years ago when they started showing up,
A little shocking.
I was always like, oh, that had to hurt. What were you thinking? Okay, it wasn't, what did you do to your face? It was always, ow, that hurt. What were you thinking? Because there's no way, you know. But it's just common enough now that I always counsel people, look, don't die on that sword. I think there's a point when it could become excessive, you know what I mean? Because I have seen things that I would classify as excessive, even though maybe they wouldn't. Well, but it's okay. Well, matter of fact, and a good point that you make is that there are professional athletes who have body piercings, but a lot of those sports say you can't have certain things on when you play.
Right.
Matter of fact, I think in the NBA, you're not even allowed to wear rings while you play, and even a wedding ring.
And I think that's
which
really
is interesting.
You know, that's really where you need, don't make an individual standard based on your personal preferences. I see this a lot where people who are very conservative are just like, I would never hire someone like that. I'm just like, why? You know, like drop your preconceived notions, drop your prejudices. But it's okay to have standards in place, but make them business standards. And just say, okay, you know, if ever you are customer facing, you know, like we do have a dress code. This is the dress code, you know, and make it just a dress code. Don't try and isolate, if you don't particularly care for a certain fashion or a trend, don't isolate that. But, if there are things that are important to you, make them very, very clear up front, which kind of brings me, so this would be my fourth and final that I'm going to talk about in the training, is trends, market trends, or human trends, whatever you want to call them. As businesses, you need to be open and acknowledge that there are trends that will shift.
That's right.
Back in the day, if you worked at IBM, it was either a navy blue or gray suit, white shirt, conservative tie. That was it.
Right.
And there were other companies that.
Well, and I think of I call it the Dallas trend. So,
okay.
I don't know if you remember the TV show Dallas. So
I know of it. I didn't really watch
and
it.
It's not that it was bad, but there was a time when everyone wore blue jeans, cowboy boots, and a corduroy jacket, right?
Okay.
Right? And you don't see that too much anymore. You still occasionally see someone like that one, but that was a huge trend in the business world. Everyone came in and had that look for a while. Mm-hmm. It was a trend. So the Dallas trend.
Well, and I look at what is business casual. No one knows what business casual is anymore. Business casual used to be slacks, button down, and a jacket.
That's right.
And that was pretty clearly defined.
But now a jacket's not included in it at all.
Yeah. Jacket's actually formal.
Yeah.
And honestly, for me, I was a little bit like, no, why are we going so casual? Does it matter?
Yeah. Well, and I think that comment right there is super important. Does it really matter? Right?
And I think if you have a look that you're going for, so when we were down at this trade show, we went out to, it's a restaurant called Lowry's Prime Rib, established in the 1930s. And so when you walk in, man, you step back in time.
Really?
And so everyone there, their uniform is very much a 1930s uniform. And, I kind of feel bad for the waitresses because it's a little bit ridiculous. But for the ambiance, it was fun.
But for the consumer,
yeah,
it's a great experience.
And
it makes sense.
It wasn't selective. There weren't some waitresses that were forced to wear this and other waitresses that could, pick and choose what they want. It was very consistent. And it's like, look, this is our company standard.
Okay. So I want to ask this question because this is going to come up. So, and we'll use the example you're just talking about where I have to dress 1930s, whether that's a gentleman or a lady.
Yeah.
At what level do you think it's the responsibility of the company to help offset the cost of that uniform where it's so specific? Whether that be a mechanic because they tend to have uniforms, or whether it's a restaurant, something like that. That at what level does a business have an obligation to either provide it or provide some assistance?
So to me, that's a cut and dry, and it's, can you wear it in every day, and will you wear it in every day? So if my company has a standard that it's jeans and a collared shirt, whether it's button down or polo, I don't care. That's the standard. I have zero obligation to require, because it's very accepted. Everyone in the United States owns a pair of jeans and a collared shirt. I mean, you could get into the rare exception where there's a homeless person who is trying to come back into the workforce. And, this is like a Bridges Out of Poverty. Excellent book, by the way, if you really want to get into it. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about the rare exception. I'm talking about someone coming to work. And even I would argue that if you, if
logoed polo.
Logoed polo is the obligation of the company, because I'm putting the polo, I'm putting the logo on it, and I still can wear that in public, but do I want to wear that, and typically you see people, if they came straight from work to an engagement, they might not have had a chance to change, and it's still a collared shirt, and so I can go to a restaurant wearing it. But I'm not going to put it on because I think it's cool, and so yeah, that's the obligation of the company. So let's look at a suit. If I am going to say you need to have a suit for high-end meetings, like that will happen on occasion, I could say that's just on you to get a suit, because you can still wear a suit for funerals, weddings, church, whatever. But if I'm going to say suit and tie every single day, because people aren't wearing a suit and tie every single day, I think there should be a clothing allowance. I think there should be, something. And a suit is something, you can buy a $200 suit or a $5,000 suit. Right. So I'm putting a clothing allowance on. I'm not buying, polos, okay, they're going to range from $20 to maybe high-end $80. Maybe, I'm getting a nice polo for $50. Yeah,
that's right.
So I can go out and just buy those. But, a suit, too much variation, clothing allowance.
PPE, personal protection equipment.
Company.
Agree.
Yeah, anything health and safety is the company.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah. But and I don't know. Okay, let me throw one to you. What do you think about companies that are constantly giving out their apparel? Like every single quarter you're getting a new shirt or a jacket or
So my preference, I don't like it when they just give me whatever they're going to give me, right?
I don't either.
Because my attitude is always, if you give me an option, I'll probably pick something I'm more likely to wear and to enjoy, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're giving me a jacket and I already have 3 or 4 different jackets, I'm never going to wear the jacket.
Yeah.
Or I'm only going to wear it on occasions just to say,
show I'm wearing it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Versus other clothing, would be nice. So I'm always, if you're going to actually do something like that one, give a little bit of an option. It might cost you a few more pennies in the long run, but the diversity, people will appreciate the fact that they're going to get something that they can enjoy and they're going to wear versus here's your shirt at every annual meeting, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think sizes, small, medium, large, oh my gosh. People aren't small, medium, and large,
Well,
I'm tall and skinny, and so I like to have a certain fit.
And that's what I like, because I've seen it and I've experienced it a few times in my life where they say, hey, look, we're going to buy something to say thank you. Here's your options: jacket, shirt, button down, a variety of shorts for whatever reason. So tell us which one you prefer and what size you would like.
Yeah.
I don't have to guess anymore. If I make the mistake, I can't hold them accountable because they gave me a large and it fits or it doesn't fit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when I have some say into that and it doesn't quite fit right, I'm just like, darn it, I got that wrong.
Yeah. So I think we're going to button this up because we're starting to get off on some personal tangents. And surprisingly, I didn't realize we were going to talk so much about, dress, but I think that's important. And, it's one of those things that if you don't think about it, the subculture will take over.
That's right.
And I've seen so many, owners that are frustrated with the subculture. And I'm like, well, that's because you didn't put any intention.
Yeah. And if you want to change it, help change it by putting some money on the table.
Yeah, put some money. Okay, I know I said I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to throw one more thought out there. If you do give a bunch of, say, T-shirts, and you give them out to all your employees, pay attention not 2 weeks later, because what will happen is you give out the T-shirt, everyone's going to wear them right away. And then the next time that, they're going to see the boss, they're going to make sure that they're wearing that T-shirt. And so for 2 weeks or a month, T-shirts are going to be trickling. 6 months from the time you give out T-shirts, see who's still wearing those T-shirts.
Within a month, just start perusing the thrift stores in the area. You'll know whether they appreciate it or not.
And be okay with it. You just got some feedback. Take it correctly, and don't waste your money. And so anyway. Well, thank you for tuning in, everybody. That was definitely a different episode, but I think a good business topic nonetheless. So if you ever have ideas of different episodes that you would like to have covered, things that maybe are a little non-traditional, maybe some questions that you have, you could reach out, Ryan at marketingmanagementmoney.com. Check us out on Instagram, MMM_smallbiz. You can see our YouTube channel, Marketing Management Money, or check us out on JazzJune. That is jazzjune.com/MMM.